Hello and welcome to this pit stop for Architects of the West Kingdom, coming from Renegade Game Studios, designed by Shem, Phillips and S.J. Macdonald. In Architects of the West Kingdom, the king has hired the players in order to build up the West Kingdom. They're going to do this by contributing to the cathedral, by building their own buildings, trying to stay on a virtuous track in life, and also trying to keep their workers out of prison. On a player's turn, they're going to take one of their workers and they're going to assign it to one of the spots on the board. There are basic spots where you can get resources. For example, when you go to the forest, you're going to get wood, but you're going to get one wood for each worker of yours that is in that spot. Exactly the same at the quarry for stone. At the silversmith, you get an extra silver +1 for each worker there. And up at the mine, you get an extra clay +1 per worker. And for every 2, you're going to get yourself 1 gold, like that. Those are the basic areas where you're going to get the resources. Now, there are ways in which you can use them and the ways in which you can boost the actions you take all over the board. One thing you can do is come down here to the workshop and you can pay some money and you can hire yourself some apprentices. Now, they're going to cost you 4, but 2 of that is going to go in tax over to the tax stand, which we'll hear about later, and the rest will go to the bank. When you do this, you get to take an apprentice and you get to take from the column according to the number of workers you have in there, but you can pay more money to have a greater choice coming across there. Now, some of the apprentices will do things like the woodcutter will allow me to take 1 extra wood whenever I go to the forest. You get similar things with the stonecutter going to the quarry, etc. Some will also boost some of the actions you have around the place, and they'll tell you when you go to a certain place you can do something different. For example, when I go to the king's storehouse and I have the patron, maybe some of the wood I've got from that woodcutter, I can spend it to increase my virtue. Now, this is the virtue track. There are different things you can do in the game to increase your virtue, for example, by hiring an acolyte or for building a cathedral, or to reduce your virtue by collecting taxes and going to a black market. And it will go up and down. At the end of the game, the higher up, the more points you're going to score. But also, the lower down, the less you're going to pay in taxes. So there's a balance to be struck there, and we'll talk about it more in a sec. When you hire an apprentice, you can have a maximum of 5 of them. But the other thing they do is that they give you particular skills up here, which will allow you to build certain buildings, because the other action you can take in the workshop is to take building cards. You get 1 by default +1 for every 2 workers you have in that area, and you add that to your hand. You can never have too many of those. You have to discard down once you get above 6. I said about tax. You can come across here to take tax as it's paid by people taking various actions in the game. You collect all the money that's in that pot. However, by going there, you reduce your virtue down by 2. When you get down to the bottom, it's going to start collecting debt for you. You're so unvirtuous, and that will cost you points at the end of the game unless you can pay it off. The other way to reduce your virtue, one of them is to come down to the black market, where there are resources available where you can get access to apprentices and to building cards. But when you go there, it's going to cost you some money, and again, you're going to reduce down in virtue. Now, when you get to a certain level in virtue, you can't even come down to the black market until you reduce down again. But equally, when you get down to a certain level, you can't add anything to the cathedral. They just don't want you not to be seen around here. The last of the spaces around here is the king's storehouse, and in there you can just exchange basic resources to improve your virtue and get back up the track, or to collect marble. Now, marble and gold are rarer obviously than the other ones. Also, they're going to score you 1 point each at the end of the game if you have them. When I come here to the town centre, that's how the worker spaces reset. They never reset. There's no rounds or anything like that in the game until we get to the very end. When you go to the town centre, that allows you to capture workers from certain areas. If you're playing with 4 or 5 players, you can only go to one area and capture workers. If you're playing with fewer than that, you can go to 2 different areas. But each time you're going to have workers here, and it's going to cost you money. And the first one's always going to go in that tax stand. Now, in doing this, I simply select workers of the other player's colours and I put them into my own holding area like that. Why would I want to do it? Because there's a guardhouse over here. When I go to the guardhouse, it gives me access to 4 different actions, and I do 1 per worker I have here. The first thing is I can empty my own holding area in there, and that's going to earn me 1 money for each of the other players' workers I have put in there. Equally, by coming here, I can release all of my own workers back to my board. You can see I was getting a bit short there, and if ever you don't have any workers available, you have to spend a whole turn just to take 1 worker back, and that's your whole turn, and the next time you can use that 1 worker. Other things you can do here are you can cut out that middle part, and you can spend 5 money, including 2 of them as tax, to just collect your workers from another player's board, or you can take a debt and lose a virtue to collect them from another player's board. Now, debt is going to cost you 2 points at the end of the game. You can pay them off by coming to the guardhouse and paying 6 money, however, and flip them over, and you'll gain a virtue for doing that to your debt. Now, we're doing all these things to enable us to join in these building projects. There are 2 of them now. Whichever one you want to go to, you must put a worker in there. Firstly, you can build your own buildings. When you look at your buildings, they're going to have a cost in resources on the left-hand side. They may also well have requirements for certain skills, like I said, of those apprentices. For this tiler's hut will require 2 clay and a wood and 2 stone. And when I build it, sometimes they're going to give me endgame scoring. For example, this is going to score me a point for every particular skill like this that I have, and I don't have any at the moment, so that wasn't a wise idea, but it'll also score me 5 points at the end of the game anyway. But some of them will give me one-off bonuses. For example, if I built that factory, it would give me 2 marble immediately. The other thing you can do when you come across here is to add to the cathedral, as long as you're virtuous enough. Now, each level you wish to go up in building the cathedral, it tells you what you have to pay: a gold, 4 goods, a marble, etc. And you must also discard one of your building cards to do that. When you do it, you move up here on the track and you always gain one of these reward cards, which will give you at least 1 virtue and possibly something else, or possibly 2 virtue. There is a slight reset that happens during the game. It's whenever the black market fills up, or the left-hand row, and the number that you put in a row is player dependent, of the bottom 2 rows gets a worker in there. We do what's called a black market reset, where all of these are in there, get arrested. Also, if you've got more than 3 prisoners in here, you're going to lose a virtue, and then whoever's got the most in here is going to gain one of these annoying debt cards. When the last spot is filled, every player, including that player, gets 1 last turn, and then we're going to add up our points. And our points will be for our buildings we've built, how far we're up on the cathedral track, gain or lose, depending upon the virtue track. Lose points 2 for having each debt, gain them for that marble and gold. For every 10 money you have, you'll gain 1 point, and you'll lose 1 VP for every 2 of your workers still over there in the guardhouse. After adding all of that up, whoever has scored the most points will be the winner of Architects of the West Kingdom. This has been a Game Pit Stop. For more videos of this, check out our YouTube channel. For more in-depth coverage of gaming, please check out the Game Pit podcast. Thank you.